All right, are we ready? Okay, one moment. All right, just before I begin, I'd like to confirm that Councilmember Fisher, that you can hear us. Thank you. All right. All right, good evening and welcome to tonight's Monroe City Council meeting. This is the regular business meeting for Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. The time right now is 7:01 p.m. I'm going to ask that Jody Wyckoff, our clerk, call the roll. Oh, yes, I need to. You're not plugged in. Council members present and constituting a quorum are
Council members Bolter, Davis,
Thank you. And we heard from Councilmember, I heard from Councilmember Gamble this evening that he would not be here. And we heard from Councilmember Hanford at an earlier meeting that he would not be here as well. So unless there's objection, we'll consider their absences as excused. And before we begin the meeting this evening, I'm going to ask council members to please lean forward into the microphone to speak this evening. So please consider moving your microphone so that it is right where you're going to lean forward to speak. We had a couple issues last week where I received comments from a member of the public where it was hard to hear a couple of you when you were speaking. So please make certain the microphones are approximately 4 inches from your mouth when you are speaking. All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. That will be the Pledge of Allegiance with Councilmember Kinney.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Kinney. The next item on the agenda this evening is public comments. This is a time set aside for members of the public to speak to the City Council on any issue related to the City of Monroe, except any quasi-judicial matter that is subject to a public hearing. If you'd like to speak this evening, please go ahead and approach the podium if you're here. Okay, seeing nobody approaching the podium. If you are online and you'd like to speak, please go ahead and raise your hand. If you're on the phone, you can hit *9. All right, showing nobody interested in speaking to the council this evening under public comments, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And that item would be the consent agenda. Councilmember Scarborough.
The motion to accept the consent agenda.
To clarify, Councilmember Scarborough, do I understand the motion is to approve the consent agenda?
Correct.
Okay, and the second concurs? Okay, the motion is to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 6. This is unfinished business. Connor, notice of intent to commence annexation. Initial meeting with Amy Bright from our planning department. Amy, go ahead and push your button and wait for yourself to be read.
Right.
And you're off.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. You may recall that we set this meeting last month. And so this is the initial meeting for council to just have the opportunity to evaluate the proposed annexation and determine whether to accept, reject, or modify the annexation boundary. In the agenda bill, I gave some items that you may want to consider when making this decision. Just for a recap, this is one parcel located in the Southwest UGA. It's currently vacant and it's owned by Mr. John Connor. And Mr. Connor is here tonight if you have any questions for him.
All right, thank you very much. Council members, do you have any questions? All right, and just to confirm, are we looking for a motion on this one? I need to pull this up.
Yes.
Okay, and can we move the motion to the screen?
There's 3 options.
Okay.
Option 1 is essentially accepting. The second one is rejecting, and the third is to geographically modify.
All right. And the staff's recommendation is to consider the proposal as brought forward. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Council members, Councilmember Davis, go ahead.
I'll move to direct staff to prepare and return for the city council's consideration a resolution accepting the annexation boundary of the 10% annexation petition for property located in an unincorporated area in the southwest urban growth area. And
I have a motion from Councilmember.
I was about halfway through that.
Thank you. I'm looking at that going, there's more to read.
Yeah,
So Councilmember Scarborough, we're going to have you withdraw your second. Councilmember Davis, you still have the floor. Please continue. Thank you.
all right. To continue and to require the assumption of existing indebtedness of the city by the area to be annexed, to authorize the circulation of a petition for annexation of the property, subject to the zoning designation set forth in ordinance number 001/2022, and consistent with this motion, and to direct the city clerk to record this action in the official minutes.
Okay, thank you. Sir. Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Davis, a second from Councilmember Fulcher for the requested action option 1, which is shown on the screen. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, and I need to take a look. Yep, seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, then we move on to new business. Item number 7.1, ordinance number 016/2022, amending MMC 3.54.130, transportation impact fees for first reading with Scott Peterson. And Scott is Jeff Jolly tonight. All right. Scott, go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, council, mayor. Tonight's agenda bill is introducing ordinance 16 of 2022. Essentially what we do is every year we review the transportation impact fee schedule in our MMC and make adjustments as necessary to account for inflation. Specifically, we look at the 5-year rolling average from the Washington State Department of Transportation's construction cost index. This year, there's a table in the agenda bill that shows how the fees are proposed to be changed, but the inflation rate over those 5-year rolling average was 4.0%. So that's reflected in the proposed table. The ordinance here is proposed to amend MMC 3.54.130, which is about our transportation impact fees. Following that, in a couple of weeks, we will bring the ordinance back for adoption. And that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff or a motion? Councilmember Davis.
No questions. I'll move to accept this first reading ordinance number 016/2021, amending chapter 3.54.130 MMC, transportation impact fees, updating the city's codified transportation impact fee schedule pursuant to the MMC 3.54.130, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. And the motion was made for ordinance number 016/2021, which was on the screen previously. Do I understand from the maker of the motion in the second that that is 16/2022, which has now been corrected on the screen?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So I have the motion from Councilmember Davis. I believe I think the second was from Councilmember Kenny for the requested action as now edited and shown on the screen. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none, we'll move to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is new business item number 7.2. This is final action ordinance number 014/2022. An ordinance of the city of Monroe adopting emergency interim UDR definitions for chapter 22.12 Monroe Municipal Code definitions. And I show that Kate Turtolo is going to be presenting this evening. Is Yep, there she is. Kate, you are now in the panel and up for your presentation. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor Thomas. So this evening, we have
Kate, can you
before,
speak closer to your microphone, please?
is it not picking up?
I probably need to turn the volume up on mine. Just a second. Is it my panel? Just a second, Kate. We can barely hear you. We think it's our side. Kate, can you try that again?
Can you hear me now? Yes, no,
Try it again.
no, yes, yes,
Yep.
no.
Okay, we can hear you now. We just needed to use something called a remote, which allows you to turn the volume up. Go ahead, Kate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so thank you. This evening, I have before you a request, actually a request for a couple of different actions. And this is really a do-over from last fall. The City Council approved an identical ordinance. It was Ordinance 008, 2021, and it's adopting interim definitions. And the reason for this is between 2017 and 2019, the city completely redid all of the development regulations. And a piece of that is definitions, so all the development standards were organized into the unified development regulations. And the first piece of that was definitions. When the definitions were adopted, they were not revised to reflect the new development regulations. And so last year, in an effort to resolve the situation, internal conflicts, the council approved an emergency or an ordinance adopting interim emergency definitions. And unfortunately, as soon as they were adopted, you lost the principal planner who was working on the project, and then your planning director decided to change positions. You had a new planning director come in on January 1st, and then I started on March 16th, 2 days after the emergency regulations or emergency definitions expired. So we're picking up where we left off. And so this evening, what we're asking for is for the council to move to waive council rules and procedures requiring 2 readings of the ordinance to adopt the ordinance this evening. And the second motion or action would be move to adopt ordinance 014-2022, reestablishing interim emergency zoning amendments to chapter 2212 of the Monroe Municipal Code, definitions, setting forth preliminary supportive findings requiring a post-adoption public hearing, providing for severability, declaring an emergency, and establishing the immediate effective date. Included in your packet is a preliminary timeline. We are going to get this accomplished before the end of the year, before this sunsets. Also included are the proposed definitions, as well as the previous agenda bill that kind of gave that included a background of why this was needed. And it included the original definitions. So you can see where we were, where we're going, and why this is needed this evening. I'm happy to accept any questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Kate. Are there any questions from council or a motion? All right, Councilmember Fulcher, go ahead.
I move to waive council rules of procedures requiring 2 readings of the ordinance to adopt the ordinances. Wait, I'm going to read that again. Move to waive council rules of procedures requiring 2 readings of ordinances. I'm going to read it from there. Yes.
I have a motion from Councilmember Fulcher, a second from Councilmember Davis for requested action number 1 shown on the screen. Any discussion on the motion? There being none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Councilmember Fulcher.
I move to adopt ordinance number 014-2022, reestablishing the interim emergency zoning amendments to chapter 22.12 Monroe Municipal Code, definitions, setting forth preliminary supportive findings requiring a post-adoption public hearing, providing for severability, declaring an emergency, and establishing an immediate effective date.
I have a motion from Councilmember Fulcher, a second from Councilmember Davis for the requested action as typed on the agenda bill on the slide in front of us for item number 2, adopting the ordinance. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda this evening is councilmember reports. Again, please lean into your microphones when I call your name. Councilmember Scarborough.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Fisher.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Kenny.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fulcher.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That's all for councilmember reports. When we are now going to move on to staff and department reports. We're going to start off with the police department report with Chief Jolly. We'll bring Chief Jolly forward into the panel. Good evening, Chief. You're now in the panel.
Good morning or good evening, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I may have said good morning to you. Please go ahead, Chief. We can go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, you have contained in your packet the report we've prepared for the Monroe Police Department for March of 2022. I would just point out a couple things on the first page. You'll notice that there is a report about graffiti that was spread about the community. I believe there was 3 instances. The mayor addressed this and very strongly in both Facebook posts as well as Monroe this week. And for clarification in the picture that's attached to that, that is not the suspect. That is Officer Munguia actually covering up the graffiti. So, but we have identified what we feel is a suspect and trying to put together a case regarding that. Moving to the last page, I point out a couple of items, including department events or under department events. I just want to give my sincere appreciation and thanks to those of you who reached out and gave kind words, attended the funeral of Officer Roca in Everett. That was a very traumatic event. And I also appreciate the words of encouragement that many of you gave to the men and women here at our department. It was very much appreciated. You'll also notice that there are 2 grants that are mentioned, an Attorney General's grant as well as a WASPIC grant for wellness. Instrumental in those were evidence technician Allison Prawn, as well as Officer Derek Lether, who did an extensive amount of work in preparing and putting these together so we could submit them. And we successfully got those grants to enhance our operations. And if that's about it, if there's any other questions, I'm available.
All right. Thank you very much, Chief. Are there any questions for Chief Jolly? All right. Thank you, Chief. Oh,
Thank you.
just a second. We do have somebody who has chimed in, and that person is being shown as Zach Lell on my screen, but I know it's not Zach. So whoever it is, I just.
Mr. Mayor, that was me, and I was
Oh,
just getting
for the
ready
next
for,
one.
I was the next report. Sorry
All
about
right.
that.
I'm sorry. We have no comments. Thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate the
you.
report.
Yeah.
All right. Next item is then the economic development report with Mr. Hebner. Rich, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you, sir. Good evening, council members. The Economic Development Report for April 2022 is in your packets. Just a couple of notes this evening. The Economic Development Advisory Board met on April 14th and April 28th, their regularly scheduled meeting times. The resolution that initially established the EDAB back in 2018 had set a conclusion for that board as the end of 2022. However, it included some language that spoke to the possibility of extending that board. And in recognition of the work still to do, the EDAB voted to recommend for your consideration, Mayor and Council, that the board be extended for an additional 4-year term. So just letting you all know that that will be reviewed and potentially brought to your for your consideration later this year. The Lodging Tax Advisory Committee has received 10 applications for the second round of funding. There is little over $82,000 available and a second round request of a little over $96,000. So I'll be working with Chair Fulcher in the next few weeks to schedule a meeting of that board to review those applications. And the Monroe Chamber of Commerce has announced the lineup for both food, beverages, and entertainment for the 2022 Music in the Park coming up in July. And the full listing is in the report, which is included in your packet. And I would just like to conclude my report this evening with a hat tip to Mr. Peterson and Mr. Farrell, as included in the report. Their departments have published the 2022 events guide, which is included in your packet from the Parks Department. And the engineering staff is in the process of getting the gateway signs installed, and images are included in your report, renderings of how those signs will appear in those locations. So great work by my colleagues in advancing some economic development priorities. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions from council.
All right, thank you very much, Rich. Are there any questions for Rich? Go ahead, Council Member Kenny.
I just wanted to let everyone know, and Rich also let you know, that there's been a huge outpouring of support and excitement about the wayfinding signs. And it's something that people talk to me, obviously, when these were in the works, and there's just really support and excitement to have our city sort of branded in this really positive, professional way. So thanks to all the city staff that's been involved in that. And I'm really excited about driving into our city and having others drive into our city and see it represented by this beautiful new signage.
Thank you very much, council member. And I'll just put in a plug. The designs that came from those signs were vetted through and helped designed by the EDAB, and that was their recommendations that came forward to council for council's approval. And so a tip of the cap to the advisory board for their work. And I'm very appreciative of Mr. Peterson and his team as subject matter experts in taking over the installation. So it's been a great teamwork all the way around, and thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? All right, thank you very much, Rich. All right, the next presentation that we have then is our Public Works Department report from our Public Works Director, Jaka. Jaka, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Quick report run through here. Recent grant appropriation applications update. That first page there. We are continuing to try to find money to do transportation projects inside of our city. But then also in this case, we've applied for a little bit of money for the municipal campus as well. As you can see a run through there, some money for North Kelsey to do an overlay, looking at the third phase of Tierney Place, which is currently still called Oak Street, the municipal campus, as I said, and then the pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements and safe routes to school. So that's generally sidewalks, bicycles, that multimodal or alternative mode of transportation that we've talked about in the past. We're going to go out and get some, try to get some money for some projects there. We haven't identified exactly what we're doing at this point in time, but those grants also aren't due for about another month. So second page of the report, very quickly, our first traffic calming program, I guess implementation of the policy that the council passed about a year ago up in the Rainier View neighborhood. No surprise, they were our first applicants, the folks that really worked hard to get this to the council's attention and bring it forward. So that's being implemented. And then of course we have our usual stats and our project updates to follow. That concludes my report. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Jacob. Councilmember Scarborough, go ahead.
Jacob, have we had any movement on what we need to kind of finalize Oak Street?
We have reached out to the property owner that we've been working with recently, and I don't believe have heard back at this point.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Jacob? All right, thank you very much, Jacob. Next report then is our Parks Department report with our Parks Director, Mike Farrell. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, and good evening to you, council members. Good to be here. We've had a wide variety of activities in the department over the last month. I'm really proud of our team for all of the things that were accomplished. You can see in the report, there's some photos there. We've, experienced some wet and wild weather here. And even as of last weekend, we still had some minor flooding of the river at Borland Park. So we're hoping to see an end to that soon. In other news, our department continues to experience some change management. As you can see that we wished a happy retirement to Dale Olson, our former park supervisor who retired after 32 years with the city. And at the end of this last month, we welcomed Mike Thomas into that park supervisor position. He's been working for us the last 7 years and most recently as our park lead. So we welcome him into his new position. You can see some activities the park board has been working on. And then in news regarding the North Hill Area Park, we are working on seeking some funding through grant applications. So we applied for 2 grants through RCO. And so we'll see how those go. We should learn of their status sometime this fall. And then pretty much wrapping up there, you can see there were some wonderful events that were held in our community, kind of the Monroe Egg Hunt, the Trout Unlimited Kids Fishing Day. It was two wonderful events. And last but definitely not least, pointed out in the report, is the Arbor Day Earth Day celebration. So again, it's just been a very, very active month as we're kind of, the weather and everything else and activities are starting to open up in our parks. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. Are there any questions for Mike? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next report, and that would be our Human Resources and Information Technology Department report. I see that Tyler has that this evening, so go ahead and click his button. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council.
Thank you.
Included in your packet is your HR and IT report. For HR, we continue to hire for positions, and we've had some people move around promotional wise, and so we have to backfill some of those positions. We've onboarded several people this year, and we will continue to do so moving forward. I'd like to point out you have 2 months of anniversaries in your packet. I was unable to come speak with you last month, but it is wonderful again to see multiple employees with over 20 years of service to the city of Monroe. So really just point out all of their service and thank them for that. The next section of the HR report I'd like to point out is our interns. So if you read through the packet, you will see that Haley Petty and Babacar Balde joined us this month. And we're really passionate about that internship program. They've brought a lot of value to our organization. We've been able to get several employees that have either been placed within our organization or in other organizations around us. Haley's a lifelong resident of the city of Monroe. She's currently working with your clerk, Ms. Wyckoff, and Mr. Hebner next to me in that executive clerk's department. And she has been a wonderful addition to our team. Mr. Balde joins us originally from the Gambia in West Africa. He is pursuing his education in information technology and is working with our IT department. So we're really grateful to have both of them on board. Moving towards information technology, we also were able to onboard a new contractor. Drew Muzzy is now with us and helping for desktop support. We have completely finished up phase 1 of the Springbrook project, and we will begin to work on phase 2 of that, which will include extended budgeting and electronic timekeeping for staff. So we're looking forward to that. Our IT department continues to work on hybrid meetings and making sure that the technology is there and available for us, and also preparing to roll that out to any of our boards and commissions that will also be using hybrid technology in the future. And then finally, there's just that graph at the bottom that shows that our IT department is staying quite busy and once again exceeding the amount of Comcates per month in 2022 over 2021 and 2020. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you very much, Tyler. Any questions for Tyler? All right, and Tyler, I really appreciate all the work that you're doing and the staff's doing right now for the hybrid meetings. I know there's a lot changing right there, around the hybrid meetings. Just thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we will move on to the city administrator report and with Deborah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking forward to the next 2 meetings on Tuesday, May 17th. We have a Human Services Resources Committee meeting. We will hear an update on our Family Medical Leave Act policy from Ben Worthen, and then the 2021 annual report review and 2022 budget amendment with Becky Hassert. We have canceled the study session for that evening. So if you're not part of that committee, you can have the night off. Looking forward then to May 24th, our P3 committee is canceled in lieu of having a transportation benefit district meeting. Please note that the start time for that meeting is 6 p.m. and we will get the annual report from Becky Hassard on the transportation benefit district. Looking at the regular council meeting at 7 PM, we have new business, the fee resolution update with Becky Hassard and an ordinance amending the municipal code Title 12 for public improvements. And that'll be first reading with Jacob Roberts. That's all for the upcoming agenda items.
All right, any questions for Deborah for the upcoming agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the city administrator report, also with Deborah.
And just as noted previously, that May 17th meeting is canceled and the May 24th Transportation Benefit District meeting will start at 6 PM. That's all for my administrator's report.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Deborah for her city administrator's report for the follow-up? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the mayor's report. Just a couple of items. First, our mayor pro tem will be coordinating things while I am gone in terms of presiding over the meetings. I'll be gone from the 20th of May, returning on the 11th of June. And let's see, I don't think I've got anything else that I can think of to report on right now. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. Right, the next item on the agenda then, oh, I'm sorry. We have a couple of proclamations that I just want to draw your attention to. I should probably look up at the slide in front of me rather than trying to remind myself what it was I was going to go over. So we have a couple of proclamations to draw your attention to. One, recognizing the week of May 15th through the 21st is National Police Week. So that's in your packets to review, and then also recognizing the week of May 15th to May 21st, 2022, also as Public Works Week. I can't express my appreciation enough for both our police department and also our public works department. They've been doing a great deal to support our community, to make certain that Monroe remains a safe place, to maintain connections and a sense of belonging. I really appreciate all the work that everybody's doing to support Imagine Monroe and to support the different policies and the budget items that the council has approved. So to recognize it only for a week seems a little too little. And I just appreciate on a daily basis all the work that everybody keeps doing. So Chief, thank you. I know that you're on the attendees list. Please share that with your staff, our appreciation both from me and from the council. And Jake, if you could do the same thing with your staff as well. Okay, thank you. All right, we do have a need this evening for two executive sessions now. The two executive sessions are potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1 subsection little I, and review the performance of a public employee RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1 subsection G. This will be combined for an initial, you said 22 minutes? An initial 22 minutes beginning at 7:33 p.m. We will announce any extensions that may need to occur in this current session for people that are joining us on Zoom. We will be connecting up in a separate Zoom meeting for the executive session. We'll be returning to this meeting when we are done with the executive session for potential action, if nothing else, to adjourn for the evening. We are now in executive session. Thank you.
For the record, this is City Clerk Jody Wyckoff. The executive session has been extended 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended an additional 5 minutes.
Are ready when you are. Okay, we are back out of executive session. Go ahead, Councilmember Davis. And before you make a motion, is there a motion there to add an item to the agenda?
I'll move to add an item to the agenda.
Okay, I have a motion to add an item to the agenda from Councilmember Davis, a second from Councilmember Scarborough. Any discussion on adding an item to the agenda? All right, seeing none, we will move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Just a second. Okay. Hey, Kyle, did you hear the
Aye.
motion?
I did.
Well
Okay.
done.
So for the record, Kyle, Councilmember Fisher was in the attendees list when the motion was made and seconded. I just confirmed to see if he had voted. He voted in favor, which means the motion passes 5-0. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Davis.
I move that the city council authorize the mayor to take such actions as are reasonably necessary and appropriate in order to increase the vacation hours for the current development services manager, consistent with the recommendations made in executive session, potentially including without limitation the negotiation and execution on the city's behalf of an employment agreement providing for this outcome.
Fulcher, second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Davis, a second from Councilmember Fulcher for the motion that was just read into the record. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. There's no further business this evening, so unless there's objection, we are adjourned. Is there objection? There being no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you.